Okay, so I'm ready to put the children's deck area on, but before I do that, I need to consider what I want to do with all of the glazing in these areas here. So these are basically wind protection areas that are being glazed to maximise the amount of light coming in. Now the kit provides parts that are in strips, and you paint the little stanchions and they fit into place like so, and as you can see from the outside looking in, they look fine. Unfortunately, they look awful on the inside because of the way the plastic part is designed. The sort of the strip they're mounted on sticks out of the back, and it doesn't look right at all, and it, aesthetically it is not pleasing. So I toyed with the idea of cutting the individual glass panes out and sanding them down and actually getting them to fit flush inside, and that's still a possible option. So I want to replace it, and I've been looking at lots and lots of different ways of doing it. I've looked at acetate and sandwiching it between new framework, which gives me another advantage that we'll talk about later. But I've really struggled to be able to get the framework to exactly match. So that's been very, very difficult to do, so much so that I've given up on it. Then I've thought about cutting the trimming the glass down and sanding it thinner on the inside, but that is such a lot of work. You've got to polish all the scratches out. It's a big job, and doesn't resolve the issue of having to paint both sides of this. And on the inside, it will look glossy, even painted black. Painted white first and then painted black over it. So it doesn't fully solve the issues, and it's a lot of work to do it. So I've ended up deciding to abandon the glass and to actually make the framework out of micro strip, and then glue each individual frame in, and then we'll go around with some micro crystal clear and glaze it all. So it won't look quite as good as if we'd used acetate, but it'll look immeasurably better than the plastic kit parts. Now, one good thing is all of these shield areas, clear areas, are all the same height, and the stanchions in there are all the same angle. So that means I can make a jig and make all of these that I need all at once, and then I can just glue them in as I go as we put each deck in. So that's my next job, make a jig. Okay, so we have built a jig, as you can see. So the idea is that I can cut all of these little stanchions for the screens nice and easily, because there's lots of them. So the idea is we put the strip in between those two points there, and then I use my knife and that cuts the angle on, and that there is a stop to make sure I get the right length. Now each of these stanchions is 5mm, and they're all the same. I had a quick check of the windows, and they all have the same depth to them. They also all have the same angle, and you can see what I've done here is I've just drawn that angle on. So what I can do is just pop that behind the window and check my angles as I glue things in, make sure it's running straight. I've done several so that no matter what part of the window I'm in, I can find one that'll line up. The spacings of them aren't necessarily all the same, so it's worth checking that, because you've got slightly different length windows. So basically all I've done is I've taken a bit of plastic card, and the L shape is there for a reason. It allows me to just put my finger down, hold it in place while I'm cutting to stop it slipping about. Then there's a thicker bit of card being glued on, and I've made this all from scraps, to be honest. But there's a thicker piece of card there, which is going to allow me to cut repeatedly without it causing any damage. 2 little bits of strip. That one is the one with the cutting angle on. That is staggered backwards just to be out of the way of the knife. So that isn't the correct angle, that's just out of the way. And then I've got 2 strips there to give me a support, and that was just 2 strips that were already glued together. The one would have been enough. You just need a stop to get the length. So nice and simple, no great science to it, and it'll do the job. We've got lots of these to do, so we'll just do them as we require them, I think, is the way forward. Every time we put a deck level in, we'll sort that out. As a jig, we might also be able to amend this later on for cutting stanchions for some of the other windows, because we've got other windows that actually have little stanchions missing. So this might become useful throughout much of the build, to be honest. Now, the other thing that I'm looking at doing right now and just playing with is these little elliptical shapes. So in the inside of the framework there are metal cutouts above the windows, so when you stood on the deck and look out to sea, you'll see these on the framework. Now they're not on the kit, obviously, so what I'm looking at doing here is penciling them in and then painting over them in white so that they're visible but look keyed in and don't look like pencil. So we're just having a little play with that, because I think that'll just lift the model again if we can get those on. So we are now ready to put our deck in. What I hadn't picked up on before, but when I was test fitting came to light, was that now we've got the exhausts in, they do foul on the underside of this part. So what you need to do is just remove some of the raised plastic just so that it fits in okay. You'll also notice that I have put in some strip lights now. They're all dried and ready to go, so we can test fit here. And that goes in okay now. It does need a little bit of holding in place while the glue dries, because there's a tendency when you leave it for it to pop out. So what we'll do is we'll hold it at the back and then just hold the sides in. It's not significant. So we can glue that in now. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to use some super glue so that it holds fast and grabs a little bit more quickly than possibly it would do if we used our plastic glue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run the glue around the part because that's easier. I know exactly where the contact point is that way. And another experiment we're just running at the moment is with micro crystal clear. So once we've put the stanchions in, we are then glazing them with micro crystal clear. And you can see here I've done some fairly large ones. These are actually larger than the window openings really are, but it's just going to be a little bit more visible to me. Now, the one issue that we have with the kit part is that all of those windows are clear, and it's the same with crystal clear. It forms a clear skin, but in reality they're all smoky, so we do need to tint them. So what we're going to do with this when it's all dried is we're going to tint one as is, then tint one and put varnish over it, and then varnish one and then tint it and see which ends up being the best solution. So with all of these things, there's a bit of trial and error and seeing what works before we do anything. And I have now done the first set of screens, you can see there, and the white on that side, black on the other side. So the process was to cut the supports, glue the supports in, paint the supports white, then using a Posca pen we've put the black in at the front. We've then used micro crystal clear to glaze them, and once that was dry we've gone over with the crystal smoke thinned 50% with water to give them a tint, and I think they look pretty cool. And the fact that we've put them in ourselves means that we can get them correctly black on one side and white on the other. Right, let's do the other two screens, show you how it was done. I'm using a Posca black paint pen to put in the struts. That seems to be working really well. That seems to be working. inside. Now they are white on the inside, as you can see, so this is a really handy solution for this. So I actually painted those black before I glazed, and I'd forgotten to do it on this side, so I've just done them now after glazing, and they've come out okay. I've managed to get a little bit on there, so there's a bit of touch up to do, but fundamentally come out okay. So once that's dry, we'll leave that a while to dry. We'll then come back and tint this glass so that it doesn't look clear anymore, as it shouldn't. So whilst all of that's drying, we can look at what we need to be doing at the bow end before we put the promenade deck in. So on the forecastle here, where we've put down our first coat of grey paint, I'm just sanding it back because, well, there was a little bit of dust landed on it, which made the surface a bit lumpy in a couple of places. So I wanted to take that out and sand that back. But also, it's just a good way of levelling the surface. So there was some undulations in the surface which showed on the paint more than I thought it was going to. So I'm just sanding those areas and levelling that off a little bit, and then what we'll do is we'll polish this surface up a little bit, ready for the next coat of paint. And hopefully that'll come out a lot better. This upper surface isn't quite as bad. So it doesn't look very pretty, but it is totally smooth now, so I'm much happier with that actually. So what we're going to do is we'll put the grey primer back down over that. Now we've re-prepped our surface and then put the grey down. In the meantime, we can get on with masking off this this area once the second coat of grey's gone down. But what I don't want to do is get any primer on that, so I'm just going to quickly mask that off just to protect it for now. Okay, we have masked that off ready for painting. I am just waiting for my Mr. Surfacer to dry in there, then we can sand it back and then add some more and sand it back and so on until we get it smooth and right. Whilst that's drying, I can now address the carpets in these cafe areas. So this is the King's Court, which is like a self-service food area, and the carpet in there originally, it's been reworked now, but originally was sort of like a grid with a sort of reddy purple colour square with on a grey background, and then in the square is like a gold motif. Now it's going to be difficult to do all that in this scale, so what we are going to do is we've used the grey primer to be the grey colour that we sort of need, and then I'm going to put down this violet red colour so that it's strong enough to be seen through the glazing when we finally put that in. And we do also have some furniture to put in there because there was little tables in that window which we shall also do. So we are going to paint this carpet in using 70812 violet red, which I usually use for sort of the heavy pinks on skin tones and mouths and things like that. And then what we're going to do is just use the same technique as we did for the child zone and just blob it on. So I'm using number 0 brush for this. We'll just do that on all of them, and that'll probably do what we need for now. It will soon be time to start fitting some of these wooden decks. The Promenade, for example, has wooden decks. And just like on the children's play area, there is an issue with the Promenade decking. Again, the kit isn't incorrect per se, but the wood deck supplied is sort of incorrect. There is real wood laid on the Promenade, except for here. It's the same material as on the children's deck. It's it's the same material that's used in many of the cabins, and it's an artificial material. But unlike on the children's deck, it does have the corking lines marked out on it so that it looks like planking. So this area here will actually be a slightly different colour. So rather than just fitting it on and ignoring the fact, I'd like to try and change the colour by staining it with the paint that we're using for those artificial deck areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of an experiment and try and emulate the composite and still have the corking lines visible by putting a wash over this. This is the spare deck that we don't need anymore. So I'm just going to use this half round section that we're not going to actually use on the ship, and we're going to try and give it a thin wash and see if that looks okay. If I can't make it look okay, then I'm probably going to revert to just using the deck, just for the smartness of finish. I don't want to lose the corking lines. So let's start by cutting out that section of deck. So I'm going to cut from corner to corner. So that is cut through, and then just going to cut round because with this particular brand of deck, the plastic underneath is not die cut. You can see the deck's peeling off. Actually, what we could do is stick it onto a little piece of plastic card. That would be nice and easy, actually. There we go, that's our little bit of experimental deck, so I can take that out of the way. So, what we're going to do is give this a good thin and see how much we need to put on to get this to look right, and see if it does indeed look right. Okay, so just going to get a small amount of paint. We don't need very much for this experiment. And then we're going to add a little bit of thinners. So that's fairly thin. So let's see what happens. So we've done a little experiment. We've got the untreated deck on that side there. Then the centre section has one coat of thinned enamel, and then this last quarter has two coats. And the effect is very subtle, but actually I think it does make a difference, and it gets it closer to the deck colour that we've got at the back. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give it two coats, and then that should just make that front end stand out a little bit. And then of course it'll have the contrast of those nice stainless steel spare propeller blades. So should look quite good. We've got a little bit of scratch building to do in that area as well, so should bring out the details a bit. Now my next task is to sort out the bulkhead gap. I'm going to start by roughly cutting some strip to size, and we can use the bulkhead height of the kit part for that. And then we can just cut that out with the scissors. And then as we place that against that edge, we need to do a little bit of shaping because there's a sort of a flare to the shape of the hull bulkhead. We're nearly there with that, so just trim that down a little bit. And with a thin plastic card, it's just easy to use nice sharp scissors. That's in there now. So that's our first bulkhead done. Try not to lose it. There we go, and that will do the job nicely. So we do have some items to go on there when we get to super detail in this area in the future. Okay, so some liquid poly. We should be able to tack that on fairly quickly. There we go, and now I know it's in place, we'll just run a little bit more glue into that. It's not in place anymore, is it? Okay, that's one done.
So we're going to do a walk down the deck. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we're due to sail to New York at 5 o'clock. In the port, you can see the Aurora and the Queen Elizabeth docked here in the port of Southampton. So we see the classic steamer chairs that Cunard are famous for, the teak wood, so that they don't blow off the deck, and the storage boxes for the cushions and the life jackets and the like. We see the lifeboat mustering identification number 2, and so we walk down the deck past the spa inside and the gymnasium up forward. One of the fireboxes that Jason and I will be modelling, and the control box next door, and there's the hydrant, and we see the double teak doors that are used for all the passenger entrances onto this deck, and we see the davits here and the lifeboats. Notice here the lights at the base of the davits and the protection bars. We see the standard lifeboats here, 150 people each. One of the small davit arms that is used for the ladders, if you need to put ladders over the side, and the ladders are in these boxes here, and they're strung from there. And then up ahead on this little platform we see the fast rescue boat. Here we come up to another one of those fireboxes, and they're arranged right along all the outside decks, and then further up we can see the bay windows of the King's Court, which is the informal dining area on board. And then we come to the first of the tenders, because they are catamarans, twin screw as we see. So these are used when the ship's at anchor to transport people to and from the ship.
So I'm using this crystal smoke, which is an acrylic sort of see-through translucent paint. We're using this for all of the clear parts on the Queen Mary 2 build, where there is smoky glass. So that is all of the windscreen protectors at the stern, all of the glass balconies, and the glazing on the tenders, because it's basically a sun glare reducer. So we're going to simply mix this 50-50. So I'm putting 1 drop of the crystal smoke in, and then I'm just mixing it with some water, and that's all there is to it. So you can see here I'm going to use a number 3 flat brush to apply this to the ship. So let's get that bit done. Queen Mary 2, there is a number of external doors, and they come in different styles. The main two being like a stainless steel door and a wooden door. And the wooden door is like a dark wood, not quite mahogany looking, but a dark wood. And I think a good solution for making those doors is to actually use some real wood strip. So I have some walnut strip here. It's 4mm wide by 0.5 millimetre thick. So that's going to be perfect in terms of thickness. Obviously these doors should be plush in real life and flat to the surface. But we can't do that. So 0.5 millimeters hardly noticeable. And there are some moulded on doors of various different shapes and sizes that we have to replace, and there's some doors missing that we have to add. So there is 3 wooden doors on the children's deck that we need to do, and we need to get them sort of done in the same dimensions as we've done previously. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start by sanding smooth this strip, which will give us the advantage of making it slightly thinner anyway. So I'm just going to go over it with some very fine wet and dry. You'll see it goes a bit paler as you sand it, but that's just because you're putting some dust in. As soon as we give this a touch of varnish, it will look pretty good. Break my strip while sanding it, so we'll just use this small bit for now. So just that with the finest wet and dry you can get your hands on has made that as smooth as glass, which is exactly what we were looking for. So the next thing I want to do is just cut a straight edge on here. It's good enough for a wooden model ship, but not for a plastic model ship. There we go. So just using the knife here, we can put a nice straight edge on and make sure that there's no fibres sticking out of the end, because this is the machine cut end currently. So I'm just going to line it up on my grid so that I know I'm cutting straight. There we go. So I've now got a nice knife cut edge, so I know that's perfectly smooth. We'll cut our doors 2.5 millimeters wide, and we can make several here while we're at it, and that saves us a job later on. And we need more doors. We need quite a few doors as we go through the build. So there is my doors. I'm being mounted on some frisket film so that we can handle them easily. So the next thing we're going to do is give them a coat of varnish. Okay, a little bit of varnish makes a big difference to them. So I've completed making up our wooden doors. You can see them here mounted on some frisket tape. So the wood strip was sanded and then cut into 2.5mm widths, and it's 4mm high. And then we've used these little nail art discs to add some portholes to them. So you can buy these on places like eBay, and they are for nail art. So you glue them onto nails. So people that paint nails and that sort of stuff. Lots of different sizes. We will use some of these others in different areas. But yeah, the small silver ones in here have just done the trick, and that was one of Stephen's suggestions, and I think it works really well. So what we're going to do next is try and glue these into place, and then they'll get another coat of varnish on top. I'm going to use the MIG Ultra Glue for this. Fundamentally, I don't see that there's much difference to this and PVA, other than this is slightly thicker. So I'm not sure I will rush out to buy it again, but as I've got it, we might as well use it. And my first door is going to go here. It doesn't quite look straight, does it? That's better. So that's my first door on. Yeah, that looks alright. Then we have a door to put here and a door here. So that is my wooden doors in place. Now the next thing I want to do is the little red and silver fireboxes. So we're going to have to scratch build those. Let's crack on with that. So I'm afraid that is it for this video. In the next video, I hope to get the promenade deck finished to a point that we can fit it We've got a little bit more work to do on this deck before we can then move on. And then our next major piece of work is looking at these parts which form all the outward facing rooms. There's more work to be done on these than first meets the eye. All that remains for me to say is it's been really great having you follow some of my builds in 2021. I've really enjoyed doing this and I hope you've enjoyed watching some of these builds come together. Stephen and I wish you all the best for 2022, and however you celebrate this time of year, the holidays and the end of the year, have a really great time. Stay safe. So take care everyone, enjoy your modelling, and we will see you very soon.